To welcome Clay, the minister of this church, to welcome you all to today's rally. Thanks, Clay.
Thank you, Ada. Kia ora and welcome to the Unitarian Church. It's wonderful to see so many of you here to support the students and to see them. I love technology, it's wonderful. But it's very fitting that you're here because this gets us halfway around the circle. It'll be full circle when we have a celebration with the students actually here and not on Skype. And we have been managing to have contact with them thanks to technology since they left. But it's wonderful to kind of throw this event for them. All this because there's been a miracle in New Zealand politics. If we were still dealing with the previous government, well, the circle would be only a quarter closed. We would still have a long way to go. But when the students were here in Sanctuary, every member of the new government, every party, had members of their party here to support them and to express their feelings about the injustice of their situation. So that today is a day of great hope. We're not there yet, but it's a day of great hope. So thank you for being here to help build the enthusiasm and the momentum as we work to close the circle. Give yourself a hand. We can't do it without you.
Thanks, Clay. From Migrant Workers Association and all the team members of the association, I welcome you all. You've taken time out to be at this rally. Last time we had such a big gathering here, the students were physically with us, but nevertheless, like Clay just said, technology is great and they're just as connected, if not more. So why are we here today? Since the students are physically not here, a lot of people say, what's the point? There's absolutely every point that we continue this campaign, we continue this struggle. It's been over a year now since Migrant Workers Association met these students for the first time. They were in a most desperate and most vulnerable situation whereby they'd been victimized from beginning to the end, all the way to their time in New Zealand. First they had the agents back in India, the unscrupulous, unlicensed, dodgy agents who sold them a pipe dream based on what the last government, the national government, was advertising on their websites. Yes, you can study in New Zealand and that can be a pathway to residence. So much for that dream being realized. We've got hundreds of students who are in the same situation as the small number that was in this church. Here they come, and a lot of the colleges, as a lot of you know, are just like shops, fronts for earning money. There's no education there, or whatever qualifications they get are pretty worthless and meaningless. Don't really get you any good jobs here or elsewhere. And then at the end of it, some of the students that we were supporting had completed their education, others were still halfway. So the ones who had completed their courses, when they went to apply for the one-year open work search visa, they were told that for your student visa, the financial documents that you submitted were fake and fraudulent. Now, the visas were issued by Immigration New Zealand. How come they didn't do all the checks at the time? Why were those visas issued? So these students came here on legitimate visas. They did not enter the country illegally. So we don't see anything wrong with the students. We don't see anything wrong that they have done. The entire fault lies with the government, the last government, I might add, the national government, for scapegoating the students, for punishing the victims of fraud. I attended a meeting not so long ago this was before the election, I attended a meeting within the Indian community where the former Immigration Minister, Michael Woodhouse, was present, and the question was asked, why don't you control the agents? And we got a very straight, abrupt answer: it would cost too much money to control those agents. So that just told us, this is never ending. It is not going to stop unless we have things like a change in the government and expect more compassion from the new government, or we just keep fighting, or all of those things that we have done in the last year or so. So today we are here because when our students were in sanctuary, we had a lot of support from the Labour Party, who was in opposition at the moment, at that time. And they are now in government, which is very exciting for us. We have a change, and we've already seen some decisions, especially on Friday when we saw Sagar Narayan, whose father and younger brother is here with us. Sagar Narayan, 20-year-old man with intellectual disabilities. Later on, Alistair will talk more, so I'm just touching on it. He was going to be deported back to Fiji, where they have no family. And Sagar cannot live by himself. So we saw the new Associate Immigration Minister, Chris Farfari, step in and put a stop to that deportation while the whole thing is reviewed. So that's the kind of compassion and a human face we are looking for us students. That's what we need going forward. And that is the main reason we are here today, and also because at the time, Andrew Little from the Labour Party promised that should Labour be in government, the whole issue will be investigated and reviewed thoroughly. And right now we demand that investigation be started immediately without any delay, so that we can actually find out whether we know the students haven't done anything wrong, but still we understand that the investigation must go ahead so that it is all done properly and we can establish that our students are not at fault. It is actually the agents and the dodgy, I call them corner shop schools. So, they are to be blamed. So that's why we are here. And also, I don't see a week going by when media does not report migrant workers being exploited. Every week we see news items. So we also need assurance and some very strong, robust actions to stamp out migrant worker exploitation. So we need action there as well from the new government. And the other thing I want to acknowledge, at the time, the Green Party, especially Denise Roach, who was the spokesperson for immigration matters, was absolutely instrumental and phenomenal to raise the issue in Parliament and bring it much further forward than it was. It's just unfortunate, I think Denise isn't able to join us today because she's out of Auckland for a family event. So, hats off to Denise, but I know we have Marama Davidson from the Greens and we have Priyanka Radhakrishnan from the Labour Party. So, and that also in itself is quite an achievement and a first, that for the first time for this student issue, we have somebody from the government with us here to listen and later on to talk to us as to what Priyanka and Marama think and what we can expect in the future. Hence our slogan, our banner there, Migrant Lives Matter, because that's what it's all about. The students who come in here, they are migrants. Their exploitation is rife, like I said. A lot of them have in the past gone on to be permanent residents here, but after so much exploitation, which is just not right. We want all that stopped. So that's why we're here. Without further ado, I would like to invite Alistair McClymont, who has been quite a pillar of strength for these students. He's been representing the students, and I believe he's also with the Narayan family at the moment. So Alistair, please come and talk to us and to everybody here.
Thank you, Anu, and thank you for coming. Before I say a few words, I'd just like to introduce you to Lalit and Sahil Narayan over here. Perhaps you could just stand up. Sahil, I wonder if you mind just coming up and just telling me very briefly how you feel about your brother and the difficulties that he's in. Just a couple of words and just explain to me how you feel about it.
I feel really sad about Sagar because right now he doesn't know what's happening with him right now. If he gets deported, he will be pretty much dead in his life.
Thanks, Sahil. Thank you for coming. The point here is that there's more than just about students. There's all sorts of difficulties. And to give you an example of something else, I'd also like to introduce you to another couple, Jacinta and Milan. Now, I wonder if they would mind standing up, and I'll tell you a little bit about their situation. Thank you so much for coming. Jacinta is a mother of 3 children. Milan came as a student to New Zealand, and Milan is working hard to care for his wife and their 3 children, but the previous immigration minister has decided in his wisdom that Milan should not be able to stay here in New Zealand with his wife and 3 children, and that instead it would be better for his wife and 3 children if Milan was sent back permanently to remain in India and never be able to come to this country to support his children and his wife. These are the sorts of decisions we had under the previous government. I want to thank you both for coming today. Thank you. So I just want to talk to you briefly about some numbers, because a lot of the talk about immigration in recent years has been about numbers. When I listen to Immigration New Zealand officials talk, it's all about numbers. I hear about how many applications they're able to process within a particular day. I hear about how many parents every year are allowed to come and visit their families. When we listen to the previous national government talk, we hear about numbers. We hear about $3 billion for the country in an export education industry. We hear about $1 billion in student fees. We hear about 125,000 international students. We hear about 10,000 students coming from India every year. When we listen to the media, we hear about numbers. We hear about 70,000 net migration. Then the next month it's 65,000 net migration. Then we're back up to 70,000, 60,000. When we have an election campaign, we hear about numbers. We hear about 30,000 less. We hear about 20,000 less. We hear some people saying we should only have 10,000. Well, let me tell you what immigration really is. It's not about numbers. It's about a young couple that come and settle in this country as teachers and nurses that teach our children, who look after our elderly in the rest homes. It's about young mothers who want to have their husband here to care for them and care for their children. It's about new migrants who come and settle in this country and just want their parents to come and visit them, but who are not allowed to come because the immigration officials don't trust them because of the country they come from. It's about young students whose families sell all of their possessions, sell their farmland just to give their children some hope for a better future by coming to this country and getting an education. It's about a young worker on a work visa who has to work 70 hours a week but is only paid for 30 hours because that's what's required in order to keep his visa. It's about a New Zealand citizen father who spends every day at work looking after intellectually disabled people and then comes home to look after his intellectually disabled son, but has the government tell him that that boy has to go back to Fiji and stay in a hospital for the rest of his life. It's about Immigration New Zealand officials telling everybody that real Kiwis don't listen to ethnic language radio stations. So there's one more number I want to talk about, and that's the number 9. It's 9 years that we've been listening to immigration simply being about numbers and not about real people. So my challenge now to the new government is that you prove to us that immigration is not about numbers anymore. It is actually about real people, and we want to see some empathy and show us that migrants are actually people as well. And I think it's a little bit sad that in New Zealand we have to rely on these 13 young, brave Indian students to tell us that migrant lives actually do matter. Thank you.
Since we want, going forward, we want justice for migrant workers who are being exploited, no end. Trade unions are a very important part of this entire movement. So I'm going to call upon Rachel McIntosh, the Vice President of CTU, Council of Trade Unions New Zealand. So please, Rachel McIntosh.
Kia ora koutou, haere mai ki tēnei whare karakia te atua. My name is Rachel McIntosh. I am Vice President of the Council of Trade Unions. I'm also a member of this congregation and somebody who has a personal relationship with Asha and Hafiz and Manoj and Sunil, whom you've just heard speaking. It's heartening for me to see so many people here in support of these people who were the most vulnerable people in a situation that was not of their own making, a situation where agents in India, private training establishments in New Zealand and the New Zealand government were the ones who stood to gain. They were the most vulnerable people, they had the most to lose, and they have suffered a great injustice. They've been deported. They stayed here for some time in February this year, and this church has kept in contact with them, as has ANU and the Migrant Workers Association. And the union movement stands for working people, and working people have the same rights no matter where they are, no matter where they come from. And these people, these Indian students, were here as a source of cheap labour in this country, and it was shameful. So I'm proud to stand with them, and I'd like to also pay tribute to the unions of New Zealand who have been supporting the students, most notably Unite, but several others as well, E2, First Union and others. And it's great to be here. Thank you for being here. Kia ora koutou.
Thanks, Rachel. Absolutely right. The union movement is most important, not only for migrant workers, I think for all workers. Everybody deserves to be treated fairly as a worker, so most important. And all of you who are here today, if you are not a member of a union that represents your line of work, I urge you to go and join your union. It's most important. When we are together, when we are in a collective, we are stronger than we are individuals. There's much more strength in being united and in a collective. So keeping that theme going, the union movement, another important member of Migrant Workers Association is a trade unionist, senior organizer with Unite Union, Joe Caroland.
Kia ora everybody, and thanks for coming here in big numbers on a Sunday. It shows that a lot more people are politically engaged, I think, now that there's hope in this country. We tried everything with the last government, we tried everything. We tried to go through the churches, to appeal to Bill English as a Catholic, to do the right thing, which is church was telling them to do, and they didn't. They didn't listen to people, and I think they got their answer a few weeks ago. And when I hear people talk about empathy, bringing empathy into politics, this is a clear case where anyone who cares can do something about this for our friends, for our workmates, for our colleagues. Just explain how we got to know some of these students. We met them late at night in McDonald's during union visits. We met them in the security industry. And they're students, yes, they're students being exploited by schools who charge exorbitant fees for business studies. But they're also workers, and they're workers who are working for, in many cases, less than the minimum wage in our city. And this stuff's got to start ending, and it's going to end quick. And we hope that the government joins with us in a crusade to clean up the streets in this town, the Dominion roads, the Sandringhams, and all the other places in East Tamaki, etc., where workers are being paid less than the minimum wage. Sometimes we all know what the Dominion road rate is, $10 an hour, no tax, and we're discovering worse. What is the rate for a worker working in a bottle shop? I'm not going to name any names, but just go into the next bottle shop. that you buy your wine or your beer from at the weekend. And go into that bottle shop again on a Wednesday or Friday. And I don't have to encourage some of my colleagues here to do that. But just see who serves you. Is it the same person that's serving you? Well, that's unusual. Maybe they're there for 50 or 60 hours. And what are you doing, bro? I'm a student. Oh, okay. Right? So Migrant Lives Matter. The first thing we want done is this crucial injustice for these workers to be solved. With empathy, there's a case before the Ombudsman. We don't believe that there was a fair process for these people, and that these people were actually used as scapegoats, as a source of, will blame the problems of society on these people. I think that's got to stop as well. Let's not go down the road of what's happening in Trump's America, or indeed in Europe, where we see the rise of a filthy darkness that we haven't seen since the 1930s. Let's not blame migrants, or Muslims, or Jews, or the other, for the problems that were caused in this country by the last government. If you don't have a house, it's because the National Party didn't build bloody houses. It's not because of Pradeep or Sunil. They're only working, bro, on $8 an hour. They didn't create the disaster. They didn't create the slavery. The last government did. And let's build houses. And let's get everybody working on a job. But on jobs starting at the living wage, right, of 20 bucks an hour, not $7 an hour. Now that's going to benefit everybody in New Zealand if we can all live together. And that's why we are encouraging you to join the Migrant Lives Matter campaign. This campaign will fight for the justice for these students, but we're going to clean up this city and all other cities in New Zealand so that all workers have a place to live in and all workers are paid fairly for the work that they do. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. We're almost at the end of our session, nearly. We will go back to some more music with Dilworth, Tama and Tama, but before that, most importantly, we want to hear from Marama and Priyanka. So I'm going to call upon Marama first. A huge inspiration, motivation, I've got a lot of adjectives, but I'm not going to stand here and waste everybody's time. The most monumental thing that I recall is Marama going on that flotilla to Gaza to help fellow human beings there, a human rights activist, MP in Green Party. So Marama, I think you'll probably express all of this much better than I can, so I'm not going to waste any more time. Marama.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you very much. I'm Marama Davidson, a Member of Parliament for the Green Party. We're gathered here today because people are demanding and have said that New Zealand deserves a government that is smart and compassionate. Thank you all very much for holding strong on the front line of a change of leadership to make sure that we can see the true leadership. And it is a leadership that will not reduce human lives to numbers. When we reduce human lives, whether it is migrants or anybody, to numbers, we are doing ourselves a disservice, all of us as human beings. The Green Party is very clear that the discussion on who comes to live in Aotearoa should not centre solely on numbers. That we absolutely, I'm thanking you, Alistair, for the conversation needing to focus on real people's lives, because when we reduce people's lives to numbers, to simply the importance of numbers, we are upholding the status quo, which says that we are defining value by the most narrow means possible. And so the Green Party is going to continue to be very clear that this is not about numbers. We will absolutely demand the review that Andrew Little promised while he was in opposition, the review that makes sure that people are no longer exploited by shifty, shady agents, especially when the government of the time was absolutely pushing and pushing to increase the numbers, yet without looking after the very people of the numbers it wanted to increase. The Green Party is very clear that we must not accept any single worker being exploited in this country, and that there is no reason ever in this wealthy country for any of our workers to be paid anything less than what is deserved, to be paid anything less than what will help that worker and his or her and their families to live good, healthy lives. That's all people are wanting. Good, healthy lives. And this country can certainly make sure that everybody gets this. I'm also here today as tangata whenua. I want to be very, very clear that for far too long, the privilege has been given to a narrative which seeks to separate and divide us. Tangata whenua have long opened our arms to immigrants to this country. It started hundreds of years ago. And some of those very same immigrants are the same people who are leading a narrative to divide us, who are leading a narrative to put the blame on groups of people who should not share any blame for the injustice and the wrongs that this country has created for all of our citizens. And as tangata whenua, I'm resisting that. There is most definitely a tiriti-based discussion that must be led by those with true leadership, those who understand that we will not be divided, that we are many, in fact, that we are many who are calling for a whole different discussion to take place that does not seek to separate us and to pit us all against each other. That we maintain our focus on the system failures that have put all of our people, our Māori people, our Pacific people, our lower income people, our new families, that all of us who have been suffering at the injustice of a cruel government are many, and we will stay together and we will stay collective. And lastly, I want to pay a tribute to Denise Roche and to the Green Party and our membership actually, who made sure that the Green Party ended up turning around and saying, we are sorry, our immigration policy should never have been about numbers. And I want to pay tribute to Denise Roche, her leadership, and our members who have been demanding a far higher standard of conversation from the Green Party, and it is a conversation that the Green Party will continue to leave with our friends in government. Kia ora.
Thanks, Marama. Before I call up Priyanka, just a couple more speakers. We'll be very quick. Sorry to keep you waiting, Priyanka. We tried to talk to Asha. That's not the complete story there. Some of you may not know. Asha's husband, Vikram, is still here. So he's been separated from his wife and his daughter for the last 8-9 months. And that really breaks my heart to, a system to tear up a family like that. So I'm going to invite Vikram to come up and just briefly say a few words about what Vikram is going through. It may be very difficult, Vikram, but please, just very briefly. It doesn't have to be very long. I know it's quite tough.
Hello, everyone. I just hope you guys can unite my family back. It's been more than 9 months now. I've been waiting for my family. So when it happened, the Labour Party, they promised us to unite. So that's what we're waiting for. Thank you.
Thanks, Vikram. Hang in there. We will get there in the end. One more speaker before Priyanka. Ricardo from the Green Party and also from Racial Equity Aotearoa. I know we've had a lot of supporting organisations. Ricardo has been with us from, I think, day one, and he's been to every single protest, every single rally, and he always helps. even at very short notice. Ricardo is there to help us. So just a few words, please.
Kia ora. I did not expect to speak today, but look, I just want to send our solidarity on behalf of racial equity Aotearoa and the Latin American community who has been scapegoated in many parts of the Western world. Look, as Marama said, the fight for workers' rights is universal, and for us to completely destroy the narratives that many political parties have put in place, we need to take a te tiriti-based approach in our immigration system. So when we talk about our country, when we talk about our people, if we don't put it into context, in the history and the damages that have been done to the indigenous population of this land, we're actually perpetuating the same immigration policies that have happened through centuries that have displaced the indigenous people here. So I stand here in solidarity for an immigration policy that is compassionate, but that understands the history of this land. I will continue fighting with Sunil and the other students to bring them back here, and I'm proud to be standing with you. We'll continue to do so. Thank you.
Thanks, Ricardo. Priyanka, now there's a connection here with the students. Priyanka herself came here as an international student, and I do believe that she was with the trade unions as well for a while, and also involved in founding Shakti, the organisation that helps women in need. A lot of things that I think are character building and make people realise that there's a greater good in this world and they need to contribute to that. And now Priyanka has also been with the Labour Party for a number of years, and now she is an MP with the Labour Party, so representing government today, I guess. So yeah, we have a lot of hopes from you, Priyanka, and we look forward to listening to what you are going to have to say for our students and for everybody here today. So welcome, Priyanka.
Kia ora koutou katoa, namaste, sat sri akal, good afternoon, and thank you. I just want to begin with a few thank yous and acknowledgements. I want to thank Anu and Sunny from the Migrant Workers Association, and also Mandeep from First Union, and Alistair McClyman, all of you for standing up not only for the students that we're here to support today, but also for continuing to speak truth to power. So thank you. I also want to acknowledge Claire Nelson and the Unitarian Church, Rachel McIntosh and the CTU, all the students who spoke up very bravely in the past few months and weeks before they were deported. And also to members of the ethnic media, because it was the ethnic media that continued to highlight exploitation, whether in the education sector or the labour force, well before many others did. So thank you. I also want to acknowledge my parliamentary colleague, Marama Davidson from the Green Party as well. As Anu mentioned, I'm here as a Labour MP. I'm also here as a migrant and someone who came to New Zealand as an international student myself many years ago. So that's given me an understanding into the system to a certain extent, acknowledging that the migration experience and the experience of international students are never homogenous. They're quite different depending on where we come from and what we come to New Zealand to do. For me, it was the best decision that I ever made. I got a really good education in New Zealand and opportunities that I'm ever grateful for. But having spoken to and worked with many international students over the past few years, I know that it's not an experience that many have had or many have shared. I've spoken to many who have told me, as Alistair mentioned as well, stories of how much their families and parents have had to give up back home to enable them to come here and to get a good education. I've spoken to many who have come here and not got that quality education that they thought they were getting, that the picture they were sold many a time by offshore education agents was pretty much at odds with the reality that they experienced once they got here to New Zealand. Many have ended up with an education that wouldn't get them a job here in New Zealand or back home. Many were forced into a situation of desperation, where they were then forced into positions where they were exploited in the labour force. Then there are the students that we've heard of here in this church many months ago, who were deported by the last government, where there was no evidence of wrongdoing on their part, but for all intents and purposes were victims of fraudulent education agents offshore. Now these cases, I understand, are in front of the Ombudsman at the moment, so it would be inappropriate for me to comment on these specific cases, but what I will say is that we are waiting for the report from the Ombudsman and that the Minister will comment on the findings of that report. What I can also say is that we have concerns about offshore education agents who are acting illegally and unethically in many cases, and potentially doing all sorts of things without the students' knowledge as well. Previous governments haven't regulated, and this is both national and Labour governments, haven't regulated against offshore education agents. We will review this. And we may consider regulation as well. We are absolutely clear, the Labour Party is absolutely clear, that we have to act so that these education agents offshore act illegally, ethically and appropriately. And the Minister, Honourable Ian Lees-Galloway, is seeking advice on this and looking at how we can ensure that this actually happens. In terms of future cases that are similar to the cases of these students here, we have committed in the past, and we continue to commit, to looking at them on an ongoing basis, on a case-by-case basis. And the Minister has said in principle, where a student can demonstrate that there was no wrongdoing on their part, and that it was the agent who had acted fraudulently and not the student, then those cases will be viewed favourably. And that is a commitment that we give. At the end of the day, immigration is about people. And I say this as a migrant to New Zealand myself. When people come here to New Zealand, I strongly believe, we, the Labour Party, strongly believes that we have a duty of care and that we absolutely have a responsibility to ensure that they are not exploited. And this is what our Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, was talking about when she said that this government will be strong, it will be focused, and it will be an empathetic government. Thank you.
Thank you. We all look forward to the cases being reviewed, and where we strongly believe that our students are not at fault, so we look forward to a favourable outcome for this group of students, and Alistair's got quite a number with him, so yeah, we look forward to that, and we hope that happens fairly soon. So I think we're almost at the end of today's session. We do have the band with us again, so I would like to welcome back. I believe we do have another friend, Hanan, who has written a poem specifically for today. Do we? Hanan Khan?
Yes, I can.
Yes, I believe you were going to recite a poem specifically for the students. If you're ready, we can, we look forward to listening to your poem now, and then we'll have Tama and Dilworth back with their guitars and their singing.
I was actually thinking of translating it, but it's in Hindi. So hopefully I'll put the translation on Facebook. So this poem is actually about a revolutionary poet, and I want to thank all the people who are standing here in solidarity with the students. And I feel that the outrage that should have been there against the mistreatment of all these students is still, I find it's still less, because there's desperation. People are asking, why are these people who've been working for $5, $6 an hour, why didn't they speak up for 2 years? Why didn't they do this? Why didn't they do that earlier? And Comrade Anu gave a good answer on Facebook, and the answer is desperation. There's no other way out. So, this poem of mine embodies that spirit of speaking up. And I want all the students that are here, go to your fellow students, let them know the good work that these people, all the comrades are doing. And hopefully, in the next protest, we see a lot more, a larger number of you, because it's your struggle. I hope you won't mind me reciting in Hindi. सुन ऐ महकूमों के गालिब, सुन ऐ हम गुरबा के तालिब, मेरे यारा मेरे जालिब, तू जिससे बात करता था कि तू जिसको जगाता था, मेरे अंदर वो इंसान सो गया है, किन्हीं गहराइयों में खो गया है। तू जिस पे हक के खातिर लड़ रहा था, वो जिसके नूर को तू खोजता था, तेरे उस दीवे को मैं खुद ही महलों में जलाता हूँ। मैं उसके नूर से हाकिम की रातों को सजाता हूँ। पसीना ही नहीं, अब खून भी उसको पिलाता हूँ। मैं उसके आते ही झुक जाता हूँ और दुम हिलाता हूँ। मेरी हर सोच पे उसका इजारा हो गया है। मेरे अंदर वो इंसान सो गया है, किन्हीं गहराइयों में खो गया है। तू जिनको जान कर कहता था कि तू जानता न था, तू जिन रंगीन कांटों को कभी गुल मानता न था, वो कांटे अब हथेली पर मैं बोता और उगाता हूँ। मैं रंगों से ढके कांटे बड़ी धज से सजाता हूँ। हथेली अब मेरी कांटों का जंगल हो चुकी है। मैं कांटों को रिझाता हूँ, मैं जख्मों को सुलाता हूँ, गुलों को भूल जाता हूँ। एक एक गुल अब पराया हो गया है, किन्हीं गहराइयों में खो गया है। मेरे चार अगर भी हैं, वही तो कांटे देते हैं। जिन्होंने जख्म लिखे हैं, वही मरहम भी लिखते हैं। मैं उनके कदमों की आहट से भी सहम सजाता हूँ। जहाँ कहते हैं रहता हूँ, जो वो चाहते हैं कहता हूँ। वो जो कांटों के मालिक थे, अब वो मेरे भी मालिक हैं। मेरी मेहनत के मालिक थे, वो अब कुदरत के मालिक हैं। जहाँ भी देखता हूँ मैं, मुझे बस वो ही दिखते हैं। वो मेरे हर तरफ हैं और हर जर्रे में रहते हैं। ज़मीं पे तो पहले ही, अर्श पे अब वो रहते हैं। मेरे दाएं तो थे ही, अब वो मेरे बाएं भी रहते हैं। मगर तारीख का पहिया लुढ़कने को ही है साथी। ये देखो लोग सारे अपने कांटे लेके आते हैं। ये देखो लोग सारे अपने कांटे लेके आते हैं। ये देखो जख्मों के जंगल लगे हैं रिसने और जुड़ने। किसी की पीप मेरे जख्मों की हथेली से गुजरती है। ये देखो मेरा और उसका हुआ अब पीप का रिश्ता। ये देखो कर रहे हैं इसके जख्म और उसके जख्म यारी। लो वो मिलने लगी हथेलियां अब एक से एक सारी। लो कांटों में रगड़ होने लगी है, बस अब चिंगारियां फूटी ही समझो। अगर तू देख सकता हो तो आतिशबाजी दिखलाएं। ले आजा मुट्ठी तान लें, फिर वैसे ही चिल्लाएं। ऐसे दस्तूर को, सुबह बे नूर को मैं नहीं मानता, मैं नहीं जानता। जुल्म की रात को, जहल की बात को मैं नहीं जानता, मैं नहीं मानता। इस खुले झूठ को, जहन की लूट को मैं नहीं जानता, मैं नहीं मानता। थैंक यू वेरी मच।
Thanks, Hanan. I wish I could translate that, but it's very difficult. Before we go on to some more music, I just want to quickly thank all the organisations that have been supporting us in the past year or so. Socialist Aotearoa, Unitarian Church, the Catholic Church of New Zealand, Anglican Church of New Zealand, the Methodist Church, Unite Union, Etu Union, First Union, Indian Workers Association, International Socialist Organisation New Zealand, Council of Trade Unions, Radio Inqilab, Bantak Vichar Manch, Azad Rang Manch, Health Sector Network, Communist League, Pacific Panthers, Fight Back, the Green Party, the Labour Party, of course the band themselves, our musicians today, and Student Housing Action Group. And I'm sorry if I've missed anybody out, because and there's a lot of individuals who have helped us at a personal and an individual level rather than an organisation. So, and thank you, all of you, for being here today. It means a lot for us to take this movement further. Thank you and enjoy the music. Thanks.
My friend, I hate to see you suffer every day. Look like they bring us to our knees. My friend, you're taking it the wrong way. Rise up, keep it yourself.